We let our two big dogs out of their kennels, so they can run around and play for a while. One is a mix of black lab and husky, and the other is a purebred pit bull, or Staffordshire terrier. Their kennels are near the woods at the edge of the yard. These woods are so big that it takes a whole day to hike through them. When it gets dark, the dogs seem nervous and start barking and walking toward the house. I thought at first that they just wanted to get into the house, but now I think they're afraid. When I went to get them 3 nights ago, even though it was already dark, we had a security light, so it wasn't completely dark. When I got to the front of the first kennel, I saw that both dogs were sitting still and not barking. When I go to get them, they always bark excitedly at me, but they were completely quiet. This made me feel a little strange, but not so much that I was scared. I will say, though, that there was an uneasy feeling in the air. I don't know what it was, but it felt like I was about to be shocked. The longer I was there, the more uneasy I felt. I was letting out the first dog, a lab, when I heard a loud snap in the woods near the kennels. I froze, and so did the dogs. I was so nervous at this point that if someone had said something, I would have jumped, screamed, and maybe even run away. There was a creepy vibe in the air. The lab was whining and had her bushy tail tucked under her. The pit bull was as far away from the woods as she could get, whining for me to come get her. I can only take one dog in at a time because they get too excited and sometimes try to fight. I felt terrible about leaving the pitty there by herself, but I had to do it. As I walked away, she barked at me in a high-pitched, whiny way that I had never heard her do before. It took forever for the lab to get to the house. I went back for the other one and dreaded every step because her door is right at the base of the woods. To get her out, I would have to open her door with my back to the woods. As I got closer to the kennel, the air felt thick and stale, and it smelled like a dead skunk. I was about to run, but I didn't want to leave my dog, who had her head down, and was facing the woods to defend herself. To be honest, I just barely made it. It was like walking through water. As I got my dog out the door, I could hear heavy breathing behind me. Even though she was scared, she started growling at me from behind. I couldn't move at all. After a minute of hearing the breathing, I heard steps coming towards us. At the same time that we both ran away, a terrifying scream came from the bottom of the woods. I didn't dare look back, so I just ran until my sadness pulled me back home. I got in, turned off all the lights, and looked at the woods through the window. I could see a little movement just out of the light. After moving back and forth for about 5 minutes, it went away. I was so scared that at night that every little sound scared me. It took me a long time to fall asleep. The next night, I went to get the dogs earlier. I thought everything was fine until I started feeling sorry for myself. It sounded like a tree branch had just been snapped in half. It was pretty far away, so I quickly let my dog out and we ran back to the house. Since then, every night I hear sounds like branches breaking and being thrown around, knocking on trees, and roaring coming from the woods. I am completely scared. I no longer even take my dogs down. I just take them for walks during the day and make sure we are all home before it gets dark. I have no idea what to do. I might buy a gun, but I'm not sure if it will help. Wow. Look at that moon, would you? It's very big. It's lovely. I've seen a lot of moons in my life, but this is the biggest one I've ever seen. It looks like a big, colorful pancake. Just looking down at me from the sky. As I drank a little more beer from my bottle, I let out a sigh of relief. The fire looked nice, and was nice and warm. I was alone in the woods. just a short trip away to get some peace and quiet and time to myself. I had just finished cooking some barbecue over an open fire. My tent was set up earlier, and everything was where it should be. It was pitch black outside, and there wasn't a cloud in the sky. Tonight, the stars were very bright, and as I said earlier, the moon was very big, huge, and even much bigger than the moon is usually at night. Something must have been different about tonight. I don't know, but it was certainly beautiful. The plan was to spend 2 nights in the woods where it was quiet. Sadly, though, that did not happen. Not long after I finished my beer, I started hearing strange sounds all around me in the woods. Shortly after that, I heard what sounded like snapping vines and twigs and who knows what else, and I could feel the vibrations of what sounded like big, close footsteps. My heart started to pound in my chest all of a sudden. I felt like I had to go, but I almost didn't want to. I just sat in my lawn chair and thought about things. Do I go pee in the woods or look for a weapon in my tent? Whatever it was big and strange. It's something I've never seen before, and I've camped down here by myself many times, but this was different, very different. I couldn't take it any longer. I grabbed my flashlight and ran to the first bush I could find. Yeah, after I was done with my business, I heard the scariest sound I have ever heard in my life. I don't know what it was. It was neither a bear nor a wolf. It wasn't anything I'd ever heard of before. I swore that whatever was making that noise scared me to death. I stayed close to the fire as the hair on the back of my neck stood on end. I tried to see if whatever it was an eye's distance away by shining my flashlight all around. At first, all I saw was darkness in the trees. Then came the sound of heavy footsteps. Now I knew for sure that whatever it was getting closer. The question was how close and from what direction. I thought I saw something when I took a few steps away from the fire, but I wasn't sure. I walked about 5 feet towards what I thought was a person's silhouette. I thought it was someone a bit taller than I was, but I wasn't sure. At first, the shape looked like a person, but it was much bigger than I was. Once I got a little closer. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't that brave. I didn't get very close to it. I just wanted to get closer to see if my eyes were playing tricks on me or if there was really something in the distance watching me. I was frightened to death. I didn't know if I should go on and walk forward or run as fast as I could back to my car. I slowly turned around and headed back toward the fire. I felt safer near the fire for some reason. If anyone is out there, they can just leave me alone. Okay. No more jokes? I can see you from my window. Just leave. Okay. I just want some peace and quiet. Even though I was trying to sound tough, don't make me call the police. I still said it in a weak way because I was really scared. Something inside me told me that it wasn't a person watching me, and as I walked back toward the fire, a big log almost hit me in the face and landed in my fire pit, sending sparks of fire and pieces of burned wood flying everywhere. The embers were going every which way. At first, I didn't know what the hell it was, but when I looked down and saw the huge log, I knew that something had thrown it at me, but it missed. If that thing had hit me in the head, I probably wouldn't be here to tell you about it. I was done with that. I ran to my tent, grabbed my wallet and keys, and ran back to my car as fast as I could. I got in, put it in reverse, and ran out of there as fast as I could. As I sped down the dirt road, I looked in my rearview mirror and saw it. Whatever it was, it didn't like me being there, and I didn't like it either. At least 7 feet high, this thing. It had dark brown hair all over its body. It looked like a man, but it also looked like a gorilla. It reminds me a bit of Mighty Joe Young. That old movie from a long time ago. That's the best way I could explain it. I live in northern Washington, not in D.C. I was hiking with my cousin in the real Washington in the northwest corner of the country. It's just something we like to do about every other weekend when we don't have to take care of our families. You could say that we live in a small town in the middle of nowhere, but we're still close enough to drive to a decent-sized city for work. When we weren't working, though, we liked being away from everyone. We always had snacks, beef jerky, and plenty of water with us in case we needed to stay safe for a few nights. The hiking trail we were on was one we had never been on before. Out here, there are a lot of different roads and paths you could take. I mean, Washington is a pretty big state, and some parts of it are very rural. This path was different from the ones we usually take. So, the last time we were out here, we told ourselves that we would take this path someday, and we decided to do it today. It seemed like a good idea, but for one thing, it was the worst choice we'd ever made. We didn't know how far this trail went. At the start of the trails, it wasn't even on the map. This thing didn't really exist, but it was important to my cousin, so he gave me a big man bone. I love things like this, especially when I can share them with someone. We were having a great time on our hike. We didn't know how deep it went, but at the time, we didn't really care. We saw small animals running around big boulders with smaller boulders on top of them, which looked like some kind of art. But seeing what looked like a cave at the bottom of the mountain in front of us was the most exciting thing we saw. I've never even been inside a real cave before. Do we even have anything we could use, like torches or lighters? I asked my cousin, and he answered while shaking his phone in his hand. I said, "Of course, good old technology," and we slowly moved toward the door. As we slowly walked through the door, we could feel how humid and almost damp the air was, which was the exact opposite of how it felt outside. I don't know if it was just because it had rained the night before up on the mountain top, but the hard dirt turned into hard stone and pebbles below us, so something was definitely wrong. The sounds of water dripping all around us were scary. We heard it at that time. As we went further into the cave, we heard what sounded like someone screaming or roaring. Then we saw something that looked like a pile of skulls. At first, they all looked like deer skulls, but then we saw some coyote skulls. That's when we saw the skulls of people. When we heard the noise again, we stopped where we were and crouched behind a rock. When we looked up, we saw a light in front of us. Inside this cave, there was someone or something else with us. As we stayed low behind that boulder, my cousin reached around and pulled his backpack out from behind him. He started to look around and found a gun. "When did you get a gun?" "I'm fed up," he said. "I just never had a reason to use it, but I want to figure out what the hell this thing is." I grabbed a nearby bone that was broken off at the end, giving it a sharp point. We both got back up and started walking slowly toward the light, which was now in front of us. We both had to turn off the flashlights on our cell phones because we were getting too close, and I'll tell you, it was hard to walk in the dark before your eyes could really adjust. I thought I was going to fall over everything. The closer we got to the light, the worse my anxiety got. I was so scared to death. "Dude? Get down. That's crazy." He said that we both hid and waited for what seemed like a long time. We were about to get up and keep walking toward the light when something big came from in front of it. We stood there in shock while we were hiding. This thing was at least 6.5 feet tall, and maybe even 7 feet. It was still kind of dark, so I couldn't really tell. It looked like a person. Even if we were a little farther away, I probably would have yelled out hello or hey, do you need some help? Because it looked like a man. But we were pretty close and could see that this wasn't a person. It had thick, dark fur all over its body. It looked like a gorilla from its head to its face. But it still had some human traits. It's hard to explain, but it was definitely a Bigfoot or Sasquatch, whichever name you like better. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I thought these things were just stories. Most likely, we're in its house. He wanted to take a picture, so I took his phone and told him, don't do it. Let's go. We started to move away slowly, step by step, so as not to be seen at all. We were walking backwards and checking behind us every so often to make sure we didn't trip, fall, or hit something that would give away our location. In the end, that's exactly what happened. We had probably gone back at least 40 feet when I thought, hell, maybe we'll actually make it out of this cave, back onto the trail, and out of here quickly, back to his truck. But no, that's not true. I tripped over a big rock and landed hard on my behind, making a lot of noise. The creature turned its head toward us, stood up straight, and started running toward us while growling and screaming at the top of its lungs. Every step he took shook the floor because he was beating his chest like he was King Kong. God bless him, my cousin raised his gun, pointed it at the beast, and shot it twice. The animal bent over, screamed, turned around, and ran back toward the light in the distance. It was exactly what we needed to get away. We ran as fast as we could out of that cave, back to the trail, and back to our truck. I don't think I've ever run so fast before, let alone for more than 2 miles. That was the whole point of going on hikes, but my adrenaline was at its highest, and neither I nor my cousin could stop. We had to leave, which was a good thing. Outside, the beast never once came after us. We never went back there again to hike. Well, I hope you guys liked the 3 stories about seeing Bigfoot tonight.